Good morning. I'm happy to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And I'd like to take the opportunity to say that the municipality of Jasper respectfully acknowledges that the municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is a traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Dinéza, Assiniboine, Winawak, Assiniboine, Neha, Nehewak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. I also wanted to acknowledge that May is Local and Community History Month. Local and Community History Month was initiated to encourage people to discover the histories of their own towns and communities. It aims to inspire pride and a sense of belonging by highlighting the importance and diversity of local cultures and historical events. I thought it was an opportune time to acknowledge the work of our own local Historical Society Board and the amazing volunteers who work alongside them to keep the museum funded and active in the community. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of Dan Frechette, who's almost single-handedly taken on the work to ensure that residents and visitors understand the historical significance of Snape's Hill. And with that, I'll ask if there are any additions to the agenda. If not, is there a councillor willing to, Councillor Hall, to move that we approve the agenda? All those in favor? Motion carried. We move then to item 4, May 24th, Committee of the Whole minutes. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Okay, we move on then to delegations. I'm seeing none. We'll move on to correspondence. And any correspondence you given? Okay, on to new business then. 7.1, crosswalks near school zones. I understand we have a verbal report.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I think Director Nadon is going to provide a brief update on this item, just to make sure that we're not letting it languish on the motion action list too long.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. This is a verbal item and it's a follow-up on the third item on the motion action list. So there was a crosswalk near school zones motion passed on January 23rd, which said that committee refer the matter of pedestrian safety at the crosswalks on Bonhomme Street adjacent to the sports fields and the Southview co-ops to the Traffic Advisory Committee. That had a target date of May on it. And so I went back and listened to the meeting because it had been a few months. So to make sure to get clarity on the motion and that we knew what was happening. And my findings were that the scope of the request is actually for the crosswalks on Bonhomme at Elm Avenue, which is where the high school is, as well as Moline Avenue. And the motion at the time was to refer the matter to the Traffic Advisory Committee. But we believe that maybe the Transportation Master Plan would be the place for that to go. The Traffic Advisory Committee has referred similar matters to the Traffic Master Plan and Transportation Master Plan, sorry. And the reason for it is that the item that was discussed there made mention of potentially flashing lights or capital improvements that might be required to those crosswalks. And therefore, because there might be a capital expense related, that's why other similar items were referred to the Transportation Master Plan. So our request today in this verbal report would be to modify the motion to refer it to the Transportation Master Plan instead of the Traffic Advisory Committee. And administration has good clarity around the scope of the request. It says right here about this adjacent to the sports fields and Southview Co-op, but we know that that means Elm Avenue and Moline Avenue is the intent. So I guess we're looking for a sort of renewed motion to direct it to the Transportation Master Plan, and then it would go into that file and not be on the agenda on the motion action list anymore, is our suggestion. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Could you give us a timeline on the transportation master plan? Because what I don't want to see is that it just gets piled up on, and because there is some other items, I think council received a letter regarding concern about another crosswalk, and so I guess it's prudent to find out about, timeline on transportation master plan.
CEO Given.
Sure. Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer, for Councillor Wilson. So we're looking at getting that started in the back half of 2024. So it will be later this year that we get started with results coming in 2025. The intention of collecting these items there is so that we can take a consistent approach. Many of them probably to really have the impact that residents are looking for involve some kind of infrastructure development, whether it's creating new pedestrian bulb outs, cutting the street, building new sidewalks and bulb outs to give pedestrians a better view, installation of flashing beacons, the flashing crosswalk signs. We want to ensure that there's a consistent approach to that. And many of these items are quite similar, going back a while, the discussion about crosswalks on Connaught is sort of similar. There's some spots where maybe we shouldn't have them, and then maybe we'd want to change the infrastructure. Maybe we do want to have better crosswalks that have a pedestrian bulb out that give pedestrians a better view. And we want to ensure that we're doing that in a consistent approach. In the meantime, we want to also assure council and residents that if there are specific safety concerns as we get into the busier summer season, that's really more of an enforcement matter. And as those things are raised to our attention, then we can work with bylaw and the RCMP to be sort of referring them to for additional enforcement or sort of during peak periods. So it doesn't mean that we're going to do nothing, but it does mean that before we go making significant capital investments, we want to have a consistent approach to that.
Councillor Hurrenby.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to you to CEO Given. Would other areas of town be also looked at? Like we've got some letters around Kermit Avenue, that area, and other areas that we see a lot of down by Mount Robson where the bike park is. That sort of thing, will those areas also be looked at in the master plan?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Keller. Yes, that's exactly it. And again, that intention is to ensure that we have not just a consistent approach to any physical improvements, but that we're consistent across the town site. One thing that can really improve safety is if drivers around the town site understand how the town site works, right? If we have a different treatment to a crosswalk in one area of town and then another completely different way of dealing with a crosswalk, it's that uncertainty that can lead to more risk. And so absolutely the intention is to consider the entire town site in addition to the specific items that have been referred to the transportation master plan. So it isn't as though we would only look at those specific intersections or crosswalks that have been referred. It is a holistic review of the entire town site to ensure we have a consistent approach and specifically addressing the items that have been raised by council and the community and referred to the planning process.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given.
Councillor Demota, then Councillor Horton.
I was okay anyway. No, I just while we're on the subject, I realized that every area of town has its own priority, and I'm just wondering, because as of this weekend, as I was going by, and I can't speak to today because I didn't take the route, but I don't know who was in charge of the crosswalks and painting in front of the school zones, but they weren't done yet. And I understand that we have a visiting population here, certain priorities, but I think I would like to see personally, and I'm not speaking for the rest of the council, maybe having those dealt with early on as opposed to later on. I'm not sure if that's a school board thing or if that's a municipal thing, but I think that the priority should be on kids first.
CEO Given.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Demota, that absolutely would, just to clarify, who would be responsible? It's absolutely a municipal thing. The municipality does an annual program of line painting. We hire a contractor to do that. But I have to say that I'm not aware of how we set priorities. If we move sort of west to east across the town site, whether we focus on the commercial district to start, or, and so that's not something I'm aware of. I can certainly take that back and take that feedback into the rest of the team that either for future years. I mean, we're already in the process for this year, but for future years, maybe considering focusing on crosswalk markings adjacent to schools as the starting point for the annual line marking program.
Councillor Demona.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If there is a plan, I mean, it's not for me to direct from here, like what the plan should be, but I thought that the optics of it, when we're doing other areas in the community that I think we should focus on that. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, because obviously there is a grand thing and it's just something maybe to consider. So thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm very excited that this plan is coming, and I've spent the last 4 Saturdays coaching 6-year-olds in mountain biking, and I can assure you it's very challenging getting them around town. The letter that came to us this weekend is addressed a concern on Pyramid and Colin Crescent, which I've seen as a concern, and I think with the new construction, it's just moved people to that entrance. And I know there was a temporary stop sign put up the dressing rooms. Like, I would like to see that back. I have seen many near misses, and again, I think it's just because of there's no entrance on the, I guess that'd be the west end or north end of the activity center, so it's all being directed to that administration building side. Would the transportation master plan also include accessibility challenges? Like, my son plays soccer. We were at Centennial Park a few weeks ago, and another family that had a uncle in a wheelchair had to go down to the very end to Benam to push up on an angle on the grass, because there's no way to get into Centennial Park from that school side. It's a sidewalk or a curb. Would the transportation master plan include some accessibility challenges that are in the community?
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Hall. So my first instinct would be say no, that would be a core focus of it. But pedestrian infrastructure and our active transportation strategy are things that we're looking to bring together. So the intent of the transportation master plan would be to bring together concepts like active transportation and how to get people out of their vehicles, biking, walking, and what types of improvements might need to be made to support that and enable it. So while I wouldn't say that it is a pedestrian accessibility plan, but that absolutely would be an element of how do people move around the town site.
So Councillor Hall and then Councillor Melnick.
Thank you. And just back to that Pyramid Lake Road, Colin Crescent intersection, that one does worry me. It is busy and people drive fast on that road. I think with the temporary stop sign that was there in the winter, it did slow things down quite a bit. And again, I have witnessed it firsthand. It's a crosswalk that's over kind of a double lane highway, if you will, and with a median in the middle, and cars go pretty quickly.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, for the opportunity to weigh in as well. I just would like to maybe be proactive that we could ask our transportation provider, who are now running the enhanced schedule, if they notice things during the summer that we should consider where it is appropriate for crosswalks and easy access for people to cross streets here in our community. And the second point I want to make is I'm hoping that the report by from the Transportation Master Plan and recommendations could be available to be included in any capital program for 2025. In other words, should we have recommendations that requires significant investment in infrastructure, such as flashing lights, is that appropriate to be part of a 2025 capital consideration?
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Melnick. So the answer is that we likely won't have specific designs and recommendations in time for budget this year. And we can absolutely consider having an amount in the capital budget for a broad category of transportation master plan recommendations. And so sort of I don't want, an allocation that's set aside, understanding that there will likely be physical improvements that are recommended. And that likely it'll take a couple of years to tag out all of the physical improvements that would be recommended. And that we could start that in 2025, even in the absence of the specifics of prioritization. We could set aside in the capital budget an amount of money. The administration could take that away and have some discussion about what an appropriate amount of money might be, again, to get started on recommendations. So it would be specific to the corner of, of Geeky and Fur, but it would say, blank $1,000 available for transportation master plan improvements.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Wilson.
Well, specifically towards the Pyramid Lake Road and Colin, would it be prudent to just request that we put that stop sign back up until more permanent measures can be made? Because like Mr. Given said, that we won't have any capital projects to address that scenario. And if we did see that the stop sign did assist in making it safer, well, why not just put them back? Well, and put, I think there was only one on the, but maybe just both directions. Just to kind of curb any, imminent risk. And then, I don't know, I just, we've had a few letters on that one in particular, and you were concerned quite a bit about it this winter too.
CAO Given, and then Councillor Keller.
I didn't have any comment. Deputy Mayor.
I agree with Councillor Wilson. I had some concerns from the residents that live along as you go north on Pyramid Lake Road. They were saying, the traffic on the other side slows right down because of the stop sign, but it lies on that side of the road. So I think if we're going to put in the temporary stop signs there, we should have it like a three-way. There's one on Colin, we should have one going each way, and I think it's much safer. I see it myself on Canada Day, that section of road, because it's a throughway for the traffic, so they can come and go back around town once the parade is gone. They just fly down there. It always concerns me with the everybody sitting in the meridian in the middle of the road, and the traffic just flies on that road. It's kind of like people, because they don't see a stop sign, that they don't see the crosswalk, they don't feel they have to slow down.
Any other comments? I would just take a moment to weigh in and say that, echoing the comments of all the other councillors, I think it's important to, once the safety concerns have been brought to our attention, I think it's really critical that we do entrust administration to come up with solutions to ensure the safety of our residents and visitors. It looks like Councillor Tomoto.
Well, I do have a motion ready. If no one else has anything to address, I just through you, just want to make sure that I have the actual term for our master plan correct. It's called the Jasper Community Transportation Master Plan. So does it matter what?
Deputy Mayor, actually, I'd just say that the transportation master plan.
All right. I move that committee direct administration refer the motion action list item of crosswalks near school zones to the transportation master plan.
Any debate? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just so it doesn't get dropped, I would make a motion that council reinstate the temporary three-way stop at Pyramid Lake Road and Colin Crescent until further permanent measures could be taken after the transportation master plan comes to us.
Any debate or comments? Councillor Demoto.
Yeah, I guess I'm on side with that if everybody feels it works. I'm not a transportation expert by any means. I know that they were up there because we had buildings in front of it. And, you know, you couldn't have a clear sight line to the sidewalk. But, you know, I'm neither here nor there on it. If you're experiencing that, you're feeling it's effective, then I'm willing to support it until another measure comes up. But I don't have the expertise in prescribing that, so that's something that administration and you know, the traffic advisory committee is okay with it. I'm okay with that.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I agree. The stop sign was put up because of that temporary dressing room, but I also do think it's much busier there because of the closure on the north end of the activity center.
Any other comments or questions from administration or council? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, sorry, and I think, you know, as Councillor Demoto has alluded to, yeah, we're definitely no experts, and, you know, we might be wading in a little further than our experience. But I think the trailers that were at that intersection exasperated the scenario at that crosswalk, and we found a solution that seemed to work. So why not? Let's leave that in place and then pass it off to the professionals to come up with that permanent solution.
Any other? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move that on then to appointments to Regional Assessment Review Board. CAO Given, you may want to speak to that.
Yes, thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. This item is a bit of housekeeping. The municipality is a member of a regional assessment review board with the town of Hinton, the town of Edson, and IV12. The assessment review board is a structure mandated by the provincial government to hear assessment complaints. Each of the municipalities is responsible for appointing their own board members. The councils together need to appoint a designated chair and a designated clerk. So a similar recommendation is being brought forward to the other partner municipalities. And the recommendation is that council appoint Rhonda Morgan from Jasper as the designated clerk for the Regional Assessment Review Board for a one-year term, and that committee recommend council appoint Lee Beamish from Hinton as the designated chair for the board for that same term. So not a lot to share here. Again, this is a piece of housekeeping that is required under that regional partnership. And a similar motion is being brought forward to the other partner councils.
Councillor Wilson.
As an appointee to that board, I would make the motion that committee recommend council appoint Rhonda Morgan from Jasper as the designated clerk for the Regional Assessment Review Board for West Yellowhead for a one-year term starting June 1st, 2024. And further, that committee recommend council appoint Lee Beamish from Hinton as the designated chair for the Regional Assessment Review Board for West Yellowhead for a one-year term starting June 1st, 2024. Sorry, I'll add the designated chair's remuneration and expenses will follow the town of Hinton council remuneration policy.
Are there any questions or debate of any sort? I'll call the question that. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We'll move on then to the annual employee housing report. And it looks like Leanne will be the person speaking to that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and good morning, Council.
I know you've all read the report, so I will just take this opportunity to highlight a few key points and then make myself available to take any questions. This is the second presentation of an annual employee housing report, which aims to provide council with more detailed information on the costs associated with operating staff accommodation units. Previously, rental revenue and asset management costs were distributed across various departmental budgets and not presented as a comprehensive whole. The report covers two main aspects: staff accommodation rental rates and the cost associated with the staff accommodation program. With regard to rental rates, administration is asking council to grant a waiver from the current policy and is recommending a 9% increase in rental rates for the two municipally owned assets. This 9% increase is based on local market research and addresses the skewed results produced by using the data specified currently in the policy. Going forward, administration will assess whether revisions to the policy are necessary. The 9% increase is 5% below the provincial CPI for rent year over year and maintains rents at the lower of 30% of employees' gross income or 15% below market value. Overall, the staff accommodation program did operate at a loss of $69,458 in 2023. However, the majority of this loss, $62,325, are expenses related to the municipal asset management program to ensure funds are in reserve to maintain, repair, and upgrade municipal assets. Additionally, fluctuating seasonal demand and planned vacancy for renovations did contribute to lower rental revenue in 2023. Despite operating at a loss, the staff accommodation program is recognized as a valuable recruitment and retention tool that aims to provide staff with affordable and appropriate housing. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Keller, MP.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to you, the end. The duplex, the site that we're not using, how soon do we think the rentals will be done there and that will come back in to pay?
We have reached out to a local company here to come up with the plan for the renovation. And then there was the potential for needing that unit for a new hire. So we held off on that. Now we will be looking forward to move forward with that again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Demoda.
Yeah, just I wanted a little bit more clarification on what number 3 Swift Crescent, the 6-bed townhome is.
Oh, Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Demoda. It is a 6-bedroom townhome that the municipality rents. It houses seasonal employees. It is very beneficial to have come the summer months when we're looking at increase in staff for summer fun as well as the aquatic center.
Thank you. And so like that one, opposed to the other two is one that we don't own.
Correct.
So that any proposed increase would come from the landlord, which obviously isn't indicated here at the moment. Are they proposing an increase? Is that where some of this is coming from?
Yeah. No, Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Demoda. We are proposing that the rents for that facility remain at the $700 per month, as the landlord has not requested a rent increase.
Okay, so I think, you know, as far as council goes, that one's been before us before in discussion. You know, over a period of 10 years, it's over a $500,000 investment. I'm just wondering that, you know, if we're thinking long term, you know, as far as sustainability and as far as assets go for the municipality, I'm wondering if there's a desire to look at purchasing our own house and renting from ourselves to pay off the mortgage, and then in 20 years, we own our own asset as opposed to this perpetual, 20 years, we're looking at $1 million. So it's just, to me, I think it might be worthwhile for considering taxpayer dollars on the grand scheme, whether or not it's beneficial to move in that direction. I'm not here to say, let's set up a plan, but maybe something to think about.
CAO given.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Councillor Demota, has raised this issue before, and I think council's heard that certainly is recognized in council's strategic plan about explore the opportunity to increase the number of staff accommodation units available for municipal purposes. So a couple of items on that front. First, Leanne mentioned the intent to renovate half of the duplex so that it can be rented out more independently. Right now, it's a 4-bedroom configuration with no separation between upstairs and downstairs. There is the possibility, we have a design of how we can separate that into essentially 2 units, an upstairs and a downstairs unit, which would provide more flexibility. So that would be one method of sort of investing in increasing the flexibility of our spaces. Right now, it's difficult to rent that out in sort of a shared approach. So council has approved, I think it's $200,000 in the capital budget just to be able to support that renovation. So that's one approach that is already sort of in the works. And additionally, council's investment in the Connaught Affordable Housing Project will also give council an opportunity to decide how many units you might wish to dedicate in there for municipal purposes. When we have those 2 additions to our inventory, I think that would be the time for council to assess whether there was a continued need to rent from a private owner. But there are absolutely things that are in the works as a result of the council strategic plan and previous direction.
Councillor Demota and then Councillor Wilson.
Well, I appreciate, reminding us of that, and that's great. And maybe it won't be council coming up with that afterwards. It would be administration advising council if we do need that extra inventory after the fact. And I think that, taking those steps in mind and once that project finally gets developed, which I'm very excited about, it'd definitely be worthwhile taking a look at that. So I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Just a bit of a touchy subject, and I believe that these houses are meant for transition needed into our community, and I think there was a timeline on, how long individuals could live there. My only concern with longer tenancies is that we don't have the available housing to entice new employees, such as our urban planning position, or I think those are, in my mind, they are there to get people in the community 2 or 3 years and have them commit to the community and move on from that housing. So I just want, is there something in the policy that states length of time? And I just want to make sure that we do have housing available for new recruitment. And it looks like we do right now, but it also suggested that there might be going to renovation. So we are hiring a high-level director, and I think we might need to have some type of short-term housing available for them.
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Wilson. There is in the procedure to go along with policy D116, a rental duration for transitional housing shall not exceed 36 months. So that transitional housing is the 2 units that we own, 1251 Cabin Creek and 895 Benham. The current tenants are aware that there is an end to their lease, and I believe it is summer 2025. And there are currently some vacancies for seasonal staff in the rental home for the upcoming summer season.
CEO Gibbon.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Maxer. So additionally, to what Leanne just shared, so the previous to the council approval and adoption of policy D116, there wasn't ever a sort of when was the timeline, and that sort of expectation wasn't explicit. And so administration has chosen, as you heard, to really start the clock ticking from the adoption of the policy. So that 3-year timeline, I can appreciate that occupancy may have been, previous to that, but in fairness, in sort of a fair approach to anybody that was there. Now that the rules are explicit, we start from that start date when council passed it, and that's why that timeline is until the summer.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. My question is, if we didn't have Swift Crescent, would we be able to, and the renovation was done in the duplex, would we have enough space to move those tenants? And then also, are we in a year lease, or what's our lease like with Swift Crescent?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Councillor Hall. We would, if the renovations were complete, we could move tenants from Swift Crescent into 895 Bonhomme, but we would be maxed out and would not be able to provide additional tenancy for any new summer hires. This is what we see. There is a higher demand in summer than in winter. So in order to ensure that we have space for summer staff, we do have to perhaps take a little bit of a loss in the winter. The lease for Swift Crescent is a year-to-year lease, and there's been no rental increase requested from the landlord at this point.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you for that information, and I am with Councillor Demote on this one. I think it's makes more sense to own as opposed to renting. And with the CEO Gibbon talking about the affordable housing, that might eventually be a thing we're able to do. I just have one more question or kind of point. Looking at the recommended increase, I'm glad it's not 44%, but 9% is still, like in BC, the maximum legal rent increase is 3.5 right now, because they have rent control in that province. I know as a council, we brought a resolution last year to 80 munis about supports for residential tenants. I just wonder what the temperature around this table is around that 9% increase.
Sorry, no, Ralph was. Well, yes.
Sorry, Councillor Demoda, then Councillor Melnick, and Councillor Kelleher.
She's a joke. Yeah, I think, breaking that down to like what 9% means, and you think about someone's pocket, and I understand they're municipal employees and they have income. I think it's a matter of weighing in, and I'd probably be more in favor of staging it over a period of time. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was my intention going in there to have that discussion. And I appreciate what's in front of us, but we've heard in the community when things are pretty tight, and we're taking active steps to affect people's post-paycheck spending money. What's the term for that? Expendable income. So I think those things are as a responsible landlord to think about. We should be setting the tone for that too.
Councillor Melnick.
For the purposes of conversation, if there are other councillors who want to weigh on the point that's being discussed right now, let's continue that conversation before I bring up my points.
Councillor Kelleher.
I agree with Councillor Hall, and I agree with Councillor Demoda. I think, 3%, 3.5% increase and base it in over the years. But I think 9.5 is a little steep. We saw the outcry in our town when some of our apartment buildings went up so high, and I don't think people can afford it, or wages are not going up by 9% this year. So I think, to keep it around that 3.5%, 4% is the way we should go.
Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, I'll just weigh in. In that debate, which I do support the 9%, we're still 15% below Jasper market rate. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't not make the move year after year. I still think that as tough as it is, I think we should make the reasonable 9% increase.
Councillor Demoda.
I understand that, these things are multi-room units, the ones that we own. And so that can be factored into splitting that up between the people that are living there. One of them isn't fully used yet. I do want to say that when you do the math, they're roughly about $2,000 each a year in increase when you work it out per month. And I don't know what $2,000 means to you, but that's a heck of a lot of groceries. So, when you're thinking about that, I understand where Scott's coming from, but we go and do an assessment and say, okay, well, we should do a 9% increase. I get that, and that's for partial recovery of what's the actual market rate. But again, does it need to be all done in 1 year? Maybe 4.5 over 2 years if we work it out what exactly 9% means. I think to stage it over that period of time. I understand there's costs involved in that. Down the road, 2 years, it might even look more like 10%, but we should have a strategy going forward as opposed to waiting another 5 years and then increasing it by 10%. I think every year maybe we should be contemplating, staging in some type of increase as opposed to big lump sums.
CEO Given.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, I'll just make for council the observation, the policy actually, you did a good job, I think generally, and you can change your mind. So two things can be true at the same time. The policy explicitly says administration needs to report back to you, and that every year we need to make sure that we're keeping pace with the market rate. So there is a explicit requirement for us to consider annual adjustments rather than saving up and not doing any adjustments. So that part is kind of covered. As you can see in the recommendation, we're suggesting that you provide a waiver from the explicit letter of the law in the policy for 2024, because if we follow the policy explicitly, one unit would see an 8.7% increase and another one would see a 44% increase. And as administration said, well, that maybe tells us that we maybe need an adjustment to the policy. So absolutely, if council wants to do something different than the recommended 9%, that we're already on board with saying, well, maybe there's some adjustments are needed to the policy, and let's for this year do something slightly different. But I do want to make the point that the policy says that we should be checking annually to make sure that whatever we do, that we shouldn't do nothing for a long time and then do something big. And a part of this discussion really is helpful to administration when we consider what recommendations we might bring forward in the future year. If council, I think the discussion at the time was that as a property owner, the municipality should be being somewhat close to what the market cost is. And we explicitly built in that rental rates should be the lower of either 15% below market or 30% of the employee's wages. And 30% of wages is actually the provincially recognized definition of affordable housing. So, I think that council has considered a lot of these issues in the policy, and the policy could be adjusted. And I think administration is saying, we may need some adjustments. We're not going to recommend them at this time. We recommend doing something slightly different than what the policy would say. And the council wants to say, well, actually for 2020, and really you only need to make a decision for the 2024 year, because that will give us some time to look at the policy, consider some of this discussion, maybe bring forward some recommendations for the 2025 year. So council wants to say, well, 3.5%. Council can kind of choose the number that you think is appropriate for the 2024 year, because we're recommending a waiver of the policy requirements anyhow.
Councillor Hall, then Councillor Demoda, and then Councillor Melnick.
Just a really quick question. Did we increase rent in 2023 to in 2021 by, or when's the last time rent was increased in the staff accommodations?
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Hall. There was a move for one unit. So when the last year, so when that move happened, there was an adjustment there for rent, and the other unit, I'm sorry, I would have to contact payroll to confirm that with you. So sorry.
Councillor Demoda.
I thought Councillor Wilson had his hand up before us, so I was looking, oh, you're good. Okay, sorry, I know you're in charge there. I just want to make sure that my colleagues are, I know what it's like to feel left out. That's just a joke. Just for clarification, and I'm sorry if this is being repetitive or causing repetition, but there's the note under the administration recommended rates that 9% is lower than the CPI for rent in Alberta, which rose 16.2% year over year in April 2024. Is that 16.2% just from 1 year, or what is the year over year based on? Is that several years?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Demoda. That would be from April of 2023 through to April 2024.
Wow. That's massive.
Councillor Wilson.
Sure, okay, I can jump in. Yeah, just for clarification, the calculated 2024 market rate, like that far right column, is that the rent that they'll be charged, and is that less 15%, or is market 15%? Where does the 15% reduction work in there? Like, are those rates on that far left right column already reduced that 15%? No.
No, Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Wilson. On the second chart, the far right column, the calculated 2024 market rate, that rate is determined using specifically the data sets specified in the policy. So that is information from 2 local realtors as to what the market value is of units, along with the rent from the Alberta Apartment and Vacancy Rental Survey for Jasper and Banff. Then the second column in the recommended 2024 rate is that calculated market rate. And then the second piece of the policy where it's either 30% of an employee's salary or 15% below market value. And those are the proposed new rates. So it would be $2,003.42 for 1251 Cabin Creek, and $2,161.82, the proposed new rent for 895 Benham per side.
For Melnick, it's finally your turn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and you may want to weigh on the discussion about the rate increase. I'll start with that. The 9% I think is appropriate. Since one of the units technically could go up substantially from the current $1,983 to 15% less, or 3,360 less 15%, which would put it someplace around $2,700 or $2,600. So the recommended 2024 rate of $2,162 round figures, I think is well within the intent of the policy. And so I do support the 9% increase for both. And I do have a second question, but if you want to weigh in on that discussion, I'll let you do that for the consistency in the conversation.
I would say that I was following the conversation and feeling mixed feelings, but I also recognize that having access to a municipal accommodation is at below market rate of 15% is an advantage, and that while I acknowledge the 9% is large in 1 year, it feels like it's been thought through very carefully, and that if in fact the 30% is living wage, then I think that I would support the 9%. Back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I did want to highlight something else regarding number 3, Swift Crescent, and ask a question. Since we have been under renovation at the Aquatic Center and Activity Center, I imagine that a substantial amount of rent wasn't collected because we didn't have employees living in that. So the loss there is probably exasperated or is an outlier compared to previous years.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Councillor Melnick. Yes, you are correct. There has been additional vacancies just due to less seasonal staff hired for the summer for the Aquatic Center.
Thank you. And I imagine as we're getting close to reopening that facility is probably going to be close to full for the summer.
Yes, yes, we do have, I believe we will be sitting with 1 vacancy at the end of June, anticipating potential hires to fill out of school care programming, which should bring us to full occupancy.
Thank you. Just my point is that, that facility with its flexibility is fulfilling what we need in the community. And at this point, until we can find an appropriate replacement, I would suggest it's more of those things that we need. The only other comment I might make or suggestion is when we do get to the fall, I don't know if we've ever entertained fixed term leases for winter employees where they might have the opportunity to occupy that space from October until April. We still have it available during our peak period, but we might be able to rent 1, 2, 3 bedrooms to individuals during that 6-month period and further reduce that deficit.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Councillor Melnick. Thank you. And yes, there is actually provisions in the policy for us to be able to do that. So we will be, I will be looking at contacting some of our busier winter employers to see if they are interested in having some term leases for those units over the fall and winter.
Thank you very much. Good, robust discussion, and unless there's other discussion, then I'll defer to the chair.
I will call on Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Upon this conversation, I might be okay with a 9% increase as long as it is 30% of the employee's wage. The Cabin Creek is a family, so that's kind of a one unit. The other two spaces right now that we are housing staff, do they make different wages? Are there rents based on their wages?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Councillor Hall. Yes, each unit, the rent adjustment is based on the tenant's income, the municipal tenant's income.
And then the rent wouldn't exceed 30% of that income.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Demoda.
All right, well, I have friends that rent out spots in the community. When we owned a house that had rentable rooms, I understood the market rate at the time, and our calculated market rate per bedroom right now is $800, and I think that might be accurate per room, maybe a little bit lower. when I look at what we're actually being charged to from, you know, the landlord of place that we rent, I think that's considerably lower than market, and I believe that hasn't changed in quite a few years. So we haven't had an increase on what's asked of, for the municipality to pay for our employees, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when I factor in per room, to the units that we have, it's substantially higher, you know, so like the 3 bed single detached home, at 1251, would equal the amount of $2,100, which is lower than what our proposed increase is. And then, the 895 Banam, if you do that per bedroom, that would be a $3,200 monthly rental, calculated on $700 a month of what we're asking to pay. However, when you decrease that by 15%, it's actually a lot lower. And I know that there's other metrics when it comes to 30% of your income. I still say that, you know, a 9% for a lump sum is still pretty high for me. And, you know, if I was going to be a responsible landlord, I'd say, okay, well, if you're going to stay here for a couple of years, I'm going to increase that. You know, I'm not assuming that we're going to have someone there for 2-3 years, but if it is the same people, then I don't think it's fair to give them a $2,000, unless they had a $2,000 increase in their income, or, you know, 30% of $2,000 is represented in their increase in pay. I don't think it's a responsible thing to do. So I'm more in favor of staging that out over 2 or 3 years, preferably 2, considering we're still below market.
Councillor Kelleher-Renby.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a question, and my question is actually for Director Nadon. The rooms that were renovating over the fire hall that we had people there about last summer in, will they become part of our rental fleet within our housing like safe bylaw, fire brigade, or how will that enter into our?
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Kelleher-Renby. The emergency services building, through the lease that we have with Parks Canada, can only be used for emergency services. So the premise there is that first responders could live in there. Arguably employees of the protective arm of the protective and legislative services. And the way we're gearing up there is sort of small bedrooms for when you're on shift at the station kind of housing is the situation for currently the ambulance employees that live there, and in the future, depending on our programs and what happens with the fire department. So Chief Conti did live in one of the dorms when he first showed up to Jasper. It's by no means a permanent situation, but it did give him a landing pad. It was, you know, a trailer or a dorm. So he went for the dorm until he moved into some of the more permanent housing that the municipality has to offer. But yeah, so it's more like a bedroom situation with a shared living with other first responders is kind of the premise there.
Thank you for that.
Is there any other discussion? By Councillor Hall.
I'm sorry, I have another quick question. Of the persons housed in all 3 units, Swift Crescent would be the only place where all 9 housed persons are employees of the municipality, is that correct?
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Hall. Yes, Swift Crescent is generally younger, single, seasonal employees coming to relocating to Jasper for a shorter term, and the other 2 units all are municipal employees with family.
Any other questions? Councillor Demoto.
I'm ready to make the motion. And it's just based on the premise that I think we have an opportunity to review it this year or next year at the same time. So at this point, I would like to move that committee receive the annual employee housing report for information, and that committee recommend council, or sorry, what am I reading here? The committee recommend council provide a waiver from policy D116 and authorize the 2024 staff accommodation rates increase by increase. Okay, I'm gonna read that again. And that committee recommend council provide a waiver from policy D116 and authorize the 2024 staff accommodation rates as proposed by administration over a 2-year period. That's what I want. So basically 4.5% per year over the next 2 years.
Any debate? Councillor Hall. Councillor Milk.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waxer, and I'm unfortunately not comfortable with the 4.5 over 2 years. I think all we're doing is pushing higher rate increases down the road. And I think if we do the rate increases now to stay current as recommended, with what's going on in the community, we'll avoid a 9% increase or 10% increase, which would occur 3 years from now. I understand where Councillor Demota is going, but I don't think it's, we're not going to be able to recover the costs of maintaining these houses if we are artificially lower than what our policy says. And we've already got a waiver in the policy, and we're staying within the policy at being 15% lower. We also have provisions to recognize when someone isn't at an income level to reduce that rate. So I think we need to be able to move the rate at the 9% as recommended. I might ask that we sever the two motions so that we can vote on the first recommendation, and then we can vote on the second one.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I would also be okay with a 9% increase as long as it's not over 30% of any municipal employee's wage.
Any other comments? Councillor Demota, are you okay with dividing the vote?
Regardless if I am or not, if the request is there, so it has to be done.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that. So just to close, I'll just say that I understand with what Councillor Malik is saying, we're always going to be behind if we take this approach, but at least we'll have another year to assess the change and come up maybe if we want to adjust our policy. I think that when Councillor Hall talked about you know, other areas, I don't like to base what we're doing on the province of Alberta, because we don't have really good policy provincially on rental rates. And other provinces have better ones to help not just protect you know, the renters themselves, but you know, just to keep certain increases stable overall. And I think that's the prudent thing to do here. I still think that 9% is a bit high. You know, and I think that taking this approach gets us closer. We're always going to be behind, but at the same time, this will give us a better opportunity to review our policy and make better recommendations for the future. So at least for this year, it would only be a nominal increase and not that $2,000 hit per annum per person that, or whoever's renting that as a whole.
If there's no further comments, I would call the question on that committee receive the annual employee housing report for information. All those in favor? Motion carried. And am I okay then to call the question Sorry, Councillor Hall, you wanted to say something more?
I'll speak to the second motion, and I'm just going back and forth here, but I think I will support the motion because yes, we're still 15% lower than market value. We're still within the 30%, but a 9% hit for one individual might be just a bit too much for 1 year. So I've gone back and forth, you guys, but I guess that's why we debate. So I will support Councillor Demona's motion.
Councillor Wilson,
I'm not in favor of the motion. I do feel that we should go 9%, and just to clarify that it's no one person is paying or is living in these houses. Yes, there's a municipal employee that is represented, and they do get the benefit of the 15% reduced rate. And you know, honestly, is one of them needs to go up 44. I don't know how we even do that. So we definitely have to go up 9 now. And then once it's vacant, do we jump it then? I'm not sure. And so then the one that is vacant, why are we gonna rent it out for the same rate as well, when knowing that it needs to go up 44%? So we have to make these tough calls, and I think why not make it now?
Councillor Demona,
Yeah, I understand. For me, you know, actually, I don't know. I'll wait till we're done debating this on the schools because so I'll just wait on.
so is this, are you closing?
Well, I'm waiting if there's other debate, if I. Jump. Okay, so I appreciate that, and you know, 44% based on calculated market rate, and again, the province of Alberta does not have any rate increase regulations, so 44% to me is still, I understand where you're coming from, just to get us to market. That doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the actual value. Well, it does add to the value, but for what actually people are going to come out of pocket for, I don't abide by those calculations in my head. So I think for me, it's like just doing the right thing. And again, it doesn't make sense to just slap people with big increases when we haven't done anything over time. So it's more just like, you know, some of us wanted to ease coming out of the pandemic with increases. We didn't want to do it all at one time. This is similar to that train of thought. So I'm staying consistent to what I felt in the past. Thank you.
Okay, I will call the question that committee recommend council provide a waiver from policy D116 and authorize the 2024 staff accommodation rates as proposed by administration over 2 years. All those in favor? Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Waxer, so that motion on a tie vote is defeated, and so council, you know, has the opportunity to put forward a different motion. So whether there's a member of council can. So administration does need direction on what council wishes to do. Otherwise, the policy would apply, and administration would apply the policy. And so council is in a position where you need to attempt to find something that's supportable by a majority of the council members present.
Councillor Demota.
I just wanted to say that this is a recommendation to council from committee. So whatever what's happening here isn't directing administration anything right now. So we still have an opportunity next week to make a decision on this. If it comes forward to us or not, we can direct that.
We defeated.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not talking about this particular one. I'm talking about the actual annual employee housing report. We passed that. So if we're going to make any recommendations to changes, we still have an opportunity to do that next week, regardless of what happened here today, regardless of what the amount is. The one over 2 years, the recommendation to council was defeated here at committee. It's not an official motion at council.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Councillor Demona. right now, there's nothing going to council. So I would be willing to get something going to council so that we can look at it next week, and I think that's where you're going. All right, and other councillors, if anyone else wants to weigh in.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I would like to recommend or make the motion that committee recommend council provide a waiver from policy D116 and authorize the 2024 staff accommodation rates as opposed by administration. How about proposed?
Are you okay with that correction? Proposed as a opposed?
Did I say opposed or did I say proposed?
I believe you said opposed.
No, we'll say proposed.
Any debate? Councillor Hall.
Just for my own clarity, this is not set. We are just moving this to next week to have more conversation around it. Is that correct?
Any other thoughts? Councillor Demota.
Well, I'm supporting it, just to get it to council next week.
Any other comments? And I just wanted to make the comment that I didn't vote in favor of the previous motion because I also am considering those municipal employees who are not in municipal accommodation, who don't have the benefit of 15% lower than, and so I was considering the fairness to all municipal employees in the way I voted. So if there's no further comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Are we okay to keep going or? Okay. We'll move on then to 7.4, Indigenous Relations Strategy and Action Plan. I'm not sure, Director Reed, I believe you're going to speak to that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer and all of council. It's actually I'm very proud of the team for us getting to this point. It's very exciting to present this item to you today. So Ms. Riddell and Mr. McGrath have been working, as you are all aware, for the last 2 years to get us to this point, and so it's very exciting. The recommendation before you is that committee direct administration to schedule a council workshop to inform the development of an Indigenous relations strategy and action plan. Alternatively, committee could direct administration to write the plan and return to a future committee meeting, or committee receive the report for information and take no further action. In the background, of course, we reference the council adopted the equity, diversity, inclusion policy. Council also adopted the 5-year equity, diversity, inclusion master plan, which sets out how the policy will be actioned over the period that we're in. In the 2023 budget, council approved the establishment of the project coordinator position within the community development department, and 20% of this position focuses on supporting the municipality's progress along the path of reconciliation. Throughout 2023 and 2024, the project coordinator has made significant progress building relationships with Indigenous partners and with Parks Canada's Indigenous Relations team. And I should mention, of course, that we also held several education and information events with council and with administration. Culminating on April 25th, 2024, council and senior leadership engaged in a facilitated discussion with Indigenous partners. The municipality of Jasper asked specifically about what kinds of things partners wish to see the municipality focus on in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. And so under discussion, administration recommends that scheduling a council workshop to review that input and inform the development of an Indigenous relations strategy and action plan. This approach ensures that the strategy is shaped by direct input from council based on what council has heard from Indigenous partners, and as well as through the community, fostering a collaborative environment essential for genuine reconciliation efforts. It also allows for a thorough understanding of the community's needs and priorities, ensuring that the strategy is comprehensive and actionable. Draft pillars, the Indigenous Relations Strategy and Action Plan, have been developed by administration, and these will serve as the foundational framework for the workshop discussion. The draft pillars include cultural awareness and education, summarized as enhancing understanding and appreciation of Indigenous histories and cultures within the community. Partnership and collaboration, which is strengthening relationships and partnerships with Indigenous communities and organizations. Visibility and economic opportunities, promote economic development opportunities for Indigenous peoples in Jasper. Indigenize community spaces using Indigenous art and languages. Ongoing community engagement, encourage active participation and input from Indigenous community members in municipal decision-making processes, build and nurture relationships with Indigenous partners. And finally, support for Indigenous events, support and participate in Indigenous cultural events, including National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th, and the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, May 5th. These pillars provide a structured approach to developing a strategy that is aligned with both the needs of Indigenous partners and the strategic goals of the municipality. An alternative approach is for administration to write the plan without direct council input. This would expedite the development process, but may result in a plan that lacks the nuanced understanding and buy-in from council, potentially leading to less effective implementation. Additionally, without council's direct involvement, the plan might miss critical perspectives and insights that could enhance its relevance and impact. Speaking of relevance, under strategic relevance, we have continued along the path of reconciliation, and we have listed the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action 57 and 45 sub 3 as they are most directly related. Of course, reading the calls to action, there's language in there that would relate to the whole development of a plan. But in general, or in specific, these two calls are very directed at this. We would welcome the expertise, innovation, creativity, and commitment of community members, groups, associations, and businesses. We will embrace our growing diversity, leverage and create opportunities for greater inclusion, promote and enhance recreational cultural opportunities and spaces. And under inclusion considerations, the proposed council workshop will promote equity and inclusion by ensuring that development of the Indigenous Relations Strategy is informed by the diverse individual perspectives of council members to better represent the collective views of Jasper residents. And of course, we reference policy E115. And the financial impact of scheduling a workshop is minimal and can be accommodated within the existing budget. So costs associated with the workshop, such as facilitation and logistics, will be managed within the current operational funds. And of course, I'm open for any questions.
Councillors, Councillor Keller-Henry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to you to direct read. When do you plan to have that workshop, kind of fall or during summer? Like, do you have dates that you're proposing?
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Keller-Henry, we would of course schedule it as the best time that council would see fit. Your comments about summer are well heard, and likely we would try for the fall. However, it is possible we could action this right before summer. It would really depend on what council wishes.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxman. Just to follow up to that, I think it'd be important that all council is available. I would probably indicate sooner rather than later. And in other words, you know, sometime over the next 3-4 months prior to budget time would probably be appreciated, but certainly would be supportive of that.
Councillor Demoda.
Well, I'm looking forward to, you know, having a workshop to go over all this. I think it's important, and I appreciate the steps that we've taken to get here, and I am grateful for the work that administration's done to get this in front of us, and again, creating another step towards doing the right thing or the right things. I'm hoping that we have someone of Indigenous representation at this workshop have a lead. I know it's difficult because there are so many different representations of communities in the national park itself. But you know, we have to take a lead, and we need some help. And having said that, I would like to probably not call this the Indigenous Relations Strategy and Action Plan. That is our intention, and maybe that should be a subtitle. I think that when we're talking about working with our partners, that we should have something a little less prescriptive and clinically sounding. It just sounds too much like a system plan with a system. And I think for me, you know, I reached out to some friends on their ideas, and they agree. And someone suggested that we use the term Meo Wiche Twin, which means we will help each other. And I'm not saying that we should use that because that's Cree, and that's, you know, that's one language, and there are many languages that are involved with these discussions. But even using a term like we will help each other or something to that effect, I'm not saying we need to decide that here today and then have the subtitle as Indigenous Relations Strategy and Action Plan below that or something like that. I don't want that to be, you know, our leading kind of theme, or even though that is a theme, it's very difficult, you know. I don't like the sound of it, and it sounds too prescriptive. So I think that in collaboration, walking together, something like that for the future sounds better to me, and I think that's more inclined to what our intention is.
Other councillors? Councillor Wilson.
Schedule wise, I think summer has really already started, and I can't really see me being like also for myself in June. I don't think that's achievable, so I would support more so early fall.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I agree with Councillor Wilson. I think as long as we maybe could have this workshop before the 30th of September.
Director Reed.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Just a bit of some extra comments to some of the discussion. That's wonderful to hear. The point that Councillor Melnick made about being ready for budget is important. If you want to action anything greater than what we currently have budgeted for in the 2025 year. As far as I guess we would say bringing in a facilitator. We currently don't have budget for that. So when we said we could accommodate this in the current budget, want to make that clear. That means using internal forces. So things that we have at our resource already, we can do. Bringing in a partner or a facilitator of some sort is currently not budgeted. So should council wish to make that, I guess, a requirement, we would then be looking for extra funding for that. And to Councillor Wilson's point about summer starting, this workshop is not intended to be, 2.5 days of intensity. And so we would look to make this, I guess, the right size workshop to accomplish the needs. And then finally, I will add, as far as naming goes, that's entirely your purview and would be a great exercise as part of the workshop. So you have that, of course, in front of you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I agree it costs money to bring the partners to town. And I think it's money well spent, but I don't have it in the budget, but I wonder if we could ask Mark Young again. He is local, lives here, and has a real connection to the partners and has a more of an understanding. Might be in, if he does live here, I don't think it would be as expensive as bringing in any of the partners.
Director Reed.
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Hall. I will add certainly that, hearing what you're all indicating, we will find what options would be presented, would be able to be presented to you for this workshop.
Councillor Demoda.
Yeah, by no means was I saying that we need a facilitator or going outside to have somebody conduct this. I mean, if we have the resources to build something, I just would like to have somebody to liaison with and talk about what the proper steps might look like, and not really facilitate everything, but have a lead in having part of that discussion. And you might have a volunteer, that might not cost anything, and it might be a minimal cost, and we can find money for that. I don't think that we should constrain ourselves to what's in the budget at this point. I'm sure we can try to find that somewhere, as we have with other things. And I think it's an important initiative, and I think we just go forward with that and see if there's someone available, and what, if there is a cost, what would that be?
Any other discussion? And if not, is there a councillor willing to make the motion? Councillor Hall.
I'll make the motion, and I feel confident that Director Reed has heard of all of our conversation, kind of knows what we want out of this, but I would recommend that committee direct administration to schedule a council workshop to inform the development of an named now Indigenous Relations Strategy and Action Plan, subject to change.
Any debate? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Is there a need for a 5-minute break now? So we'll reconvene at 2 minutes past 11. Thank you. Welcome back. And we move now to item 7.5, appointed council member on Jasper Food Alliance Committee. Who would like to speak to that? Director Reed.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Yes, the item before you is an appointed council member on the Jasper Food Alliance Committee. The recommendation is that committee recommend council appoint one councillor and one alternate to the Jasper Food Alliance Committee. Alternatives are that committee direct administration to return to a future committee meeting with more information, or that committee receive the report for information and take no further action. The background is, in the 2023 budget, council approved the establishment of the project coordinator position within the community development department, with 30% of this position focuses on engaging local partners and creating a food security strategy for Jasper. Through 2023 and 2024, the project coordinator made significant progress building collaborative relationships with food-focused organizations. On May 7th, 2024, council approved policy A107, council representation on external boards and committees policy, which is intended to provide consistency and equity in how requests for elected official representation on external boards and committees are handled. Under discussion, the Jasper Food Alliance formed in 2023 and established a clear mission. Jasper Food Alliance increases food security in Jasper through partnerships, programming, and research to create a resilient regional food system. In early 2024, the Jasper Food Alliance also conducted a food security survey in the community, the results of which helped to shape the broad-based strategic planning around food security for the community of Jasper. Part of establishing the Jasper Food Alliance included establishing terms of reference that set out the parameters by which the group will operate. The terms of reference were approved by the Jasper Food Alliance on February 20th, 2024. Under policy A107, council may choose to appoint members to represent the municipality on external boards and committees that meet one or more of the following criteria. The municipality provides ongoing financial contributions greater than $2,500 per year to the organization. The municipality maintains a membership in the organization. The organization is a lessee of space within a municipal facility, or the work of the organization aligns with council's strategic priorities. Through the project coordinator position, the municipality of Jasper contributes more than $2,500 per year towards supporting Jasper Food Alliance and the development of food security strategy for Jasper. The JFAC terms of reference list the municipality of Jasper as a member of the JFA committee. Additionally, the JFAC's work aligns closely with two of council's strategic priorities. Take proactive steps to reduce the risk of people becoming vulnerable and respond when they are vulnerable, as well as welcome the expertise, innovation, creativity, commitment of community members, groups, associations, and businesses. In terms of the commitment, the Jasper Food Alliance Committee meets 4 times a year and may meet more frequently as required. Typical meetings have been 1.5 hours in length. Administration recommends that council appoint a member and an alternate to the Jasper Food Alliance Committee. While the project coordinator continues to support the group administratively in meetings and planning processes, council's participation will ensure the food security strategy for Jasper includes the perspective and insights of council, which will enhance its relevance and impact. We've mentioned these strategic relevance priorities already, and inclusion considerations. Jasper Food Alliance is guided by inclusive values of cooperation, community, caring, creativity, diversity, sustainability, and learning. And the JFA takes a non-judgmental, person-focused, collaborative approach in its efforts to improve availability, affordability, and access to diverse foods and food distribution systems that meet changing and diverse food needs. We've listed our 2 policies there. The financial impact of appointing a member of council to sit on the JFA can be accommodated within the existing budget. And I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Councillors, any questions? Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm really happy this is before us, as I know that food bank numbers are trending up, not down, and people are needing food. I have a very quick question about the actual terms of reference. Under 3.3, food bank, food society, and council, is the food recovery program like umbrellaed under the local food society?
Deputy Mayor Waxer through the Councillor Hall. That's my understanding, yes.
Councillor Demoter.
Do we have any councillors interested? So we have one, do we have an alternate? Here we go, look at that. I spoke last.
Councillor Kelleher Envy. Got that?
We don't have to name the names today, right? Because it's going to council anyway, so we can do that.
No, I just trying to clarify, because when we had one of these before, we had, I thought we read it that the mayor appoints, so that's what I was clarifying with Mr. Given before I made the motion.
CEO Given.
I think actually the mayor provides a recommendation and council ultimately votes on the mayor's recommendation. So the mayor doesn't get to do it independently. I think the practice is that council gives the mayor the flexibility to make a recommendation on the actual specific people. So a motion that committee recommend council support the mayor's. So it can be dealt with either way. I think if the intent is for municipal council to be represented on the committee, moving the item forward is sort of the intent. And at the council meeting, the mayor may have a recommendation of which individual council members should be appointed.
Okay, are you ready to make a motion?
The committee recommend council find one councillor and one alternate to the Jasper Food Alliance Committee.
Any debate or questions? I'll call the question. Those all in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We move on then to 7.6 federal housing advocacy. And I'm looking to you, CEO Derek.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. This update is just to provide a bit of a progress update to council. There was previously a motion, and we're going to speak to that during the motion action list. Related to coordinating with the Federal Minister of Infrastructure and Housing. Administration has had some conversations with the Minister's Chief of Staff. They referred us to somebody within CMHC. I think under a little bit of a misunderstanding of what our core concern was. And so we've since gone back to the Minister's Chief of Staff and are just looking to clarify that. I would like to give them an opportunity to see if there's a chance for admin to admin conversation, but I've also let them know that we are looking for an elected official to elected official conversation to see about the potential scheduling that. So I want to provide an update. It is an important topic. There are some timeline aspects to this with respect to the Canada Affordable Housing Project. So I'm sure council's interested and wants to know where this is. And at the same time, it's not yet concluded. So the recommendation, the motion action list is to defer, so to keep it on the list so it doesn't disappear. But I thought council might like a little bit more insight into what has happened. Leanne and I have had a couple of good conversations. And they were mostly focused on the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is actually not where our primary concern is at this point. And so we're looking to clarify that again, as I said, with the Minister's Chief of Staff. And I'm expecting the next day or so to get a response back from them so we can sort of retarget. So, okay, so what next steps do we need to do to get our issue in front of the minister?
Are there questions for CEO? Okay, so there's no follow-up required. Do we need a motion? Motion to accept the report for information. Councillor Hall is willing to make that motion. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We move on then to the motion action list.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, a few brief updates, actually really only three changes. First, the transit capital projects, we're recommending that item be updated to June from May. As council is aware, we've had the RFP for the transit facility that has closed. I can provide a brief insight that we had, I think 6 or 7 submissions, a number of which were within the approved budget. And so we're just sort of reviewing the highest evaluated, having some discussions and building a report to bring to council. And we recognize that there's a sort of 2-part consideration around electric buses. And so we're working to bring forward the recommendation on the transit facility. And you'll likely will likely receive a RFD on the electric buses. And so council can have a consideration of whether you wish to move forward with procurement on the electric buses before whether we put in front of you a decision to award construction of the transit facility, because obviously the two are linked. So we expect that to come at the first committee meeting in June. So that's the update on that item and why we're recommending to move it forward. The crosswalks near school zones, Director Nadon provided a verbal update on that and has been sort of forwarded on to the transportation master plan. So we recommend that item could come off again because it is captured somewhere else. And on the federal housing advocacy, as I just noted, our recommendation would be that it stay on the list, but that we update the date to June. Again, we don't want to lose that item. And we do want to reflect that there's ongoing conversation about that. So hopefully we can come to some resolution that in a meeting in June, we'd be able to take that item off the list, but not recommended at this time.
Any questions or concerns of Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I just have a question around men's shed, and I know they've been busy building and doing. I'm assuming we haven't provided one of the 3 bay garages because it's probably still under construction or hiding. Are they working somewhere within the municipality, or are they kind of on their own at this point?
Director Reid.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Councillor Hall. They are not currently working in any municipal supported space. And the space that we will be bringing a further report to council on is not available until the end of the project. So that's in essence on hold, but the pre-work is ongoing. And yes, it would appear as though they are getting stuff done in other places. I think they have access to a smaller garage on one member and things like that, but it is sort of by no means able to be formalized as it is. It's very ad hoc.
Any other questions, thoughts? Is there someone willing to make the motion to accept the motion action list with the proposed changes? Councillor Keller MP. All in favor? Motion carried. Councillor upcoming meetings. Councillor Keller MP.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. This Friday, I will be attending the AGM and the board meeting for Trans-Canada Overhead Highway in Edmonton.
Other councillors? Councillor Keller.
I just want to invite you all to our barbecue on Saturday at Senior Summit for our fundraiser for the generators. I just give it a plug in there.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tomorrow morning, I'll be walking around, I think with Councillor Melnick and I'm not sure who else for the business walk, Deputy Mayor Waxer. And I think that's all I have to report.
Okay, upcoming events. Anything to add to the list? Hopefully we'll see you all at the barbecue on the Saturday. And the MLJ Wellness Barbecue as well coming up this week. We then move to in camera and item 11.1, and I don't believe that we anticipate anything further as a result. So we will come back out of camera to adjourn, but we don't anticipate there'll be any further discussion. So with that,
Councillor, Deputy Mayor Waxer, maybe I'll just identify that this is a council discussion related to an HR matter, and that there will be no admin staying present during the in-camera. And just for the record, in case the public wanted to know if the entire group is staying, it was actually a council discussion.
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there a council? Is there a councillor willing? I apologize. I neglected to get a motion to move in camera. If someone is willing, looks like Councillor Demoda is willing to make all those in favor. Now we can record.